Howdy, everyone. Let's get a sound check. It's so great that so many of you came in early and told us where you're from and all of that. So we are here in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and it's really cold in our office. I mean, it's not really cold outside right now, is it? I don't think so, but it is really cold in our office. So we're both putting up on our sweatshirts and
It doesn't say it's cold.
It doesn't say it's cold? Okay. But I want to thank everybody from joining in. Thank you, Debbie, for giving us the sound check. Always like to start with that. And David, you also said that that sounds good. And thank you from joining from St. Catherine's. I have ancestors from there. And then Andy always left people from Scotland. They say, is it Scotland that speaks English correctly?
Yes.
And we have you from Knoxville. I want to say hello to some of our first timers. If you're a first timer, go ahead and tell us in the chat. But we have KQDO882. Welcome. You're a first timer. And Pamela, you're also joining for the first time. So let's give you a little rundown on how this is going to roll. So what we're going to do is we are going to be tackling genealogy research questions. I have a couple of them preloaded from some comments, from some emails sent in and so forth. Yeah, and we're going to tackle that. But in the comments section of this video, if you will please put a Q in front of your genealogy research related questions, not DNA. We're not going to do DNA today. If DNA is part of the answer, we won't exclude that, but we're going to stay on focus this time and do genealogy research related question. Dory Ann has one, a great Revolutionary War question. We'll tackle that as well. So go ahead and put Q in from your question. We'll answer them in the order that they were received. If you do hit the super chat button and give us a few extra dollars as a thank you for answering your question will be bumped to the top, but only if it's genealogy research. If it's DNA, that's not, we're going to have to thank you for the money and answer that in a different video. All right.
So real quick, Kim had asked about closed captioning. I don't think we have any way of turning closed captioning on. I think there's the auto closed captioning that you can turn on YouTube right now, but we don't have any way of turning closed captioning on from our end.
Yeah. And it's supposed, the settings that I put for the live stream, it's supposed to be not the best captioning, but it should be there during the live show. And if not, if you give it about a couple days, then YouTube will come in and do the captioning afterwards. Sorry about that, but that's basically the best way to be able to make sure our streaming doesn't die. Thank you for all of you new first timers. I'm so glad you're here. Go ahead and tell us how you found the Family History Fanatics channel. If you've been a long time watcher, first time streamer, or if you're absolutely new, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much. It's really great to see. It says closed captioning is unavailable. That's too bad because we did set the settings for that to go automatically. I don't know what's going on. So the best bet is that in a few days, the caption will be there on the replay, and the replays, it happens just as soon as this goes out, but the closed captioning might be a little bit delayed. But I'm going to make a note real quick about closed captioning. I will check that and make sure that's the case. Sorry about that. That is frustrating. I'm hearing impaired, so that's always frustrating for me. Okay. Oh, I understand. Yeah, you're 100% deaf. I get that. But that's why we have closed captioning on almost every single one of our videos, but not necessarily the live streams. I do apologize for that. All right. So let's get started with our questions of the day. I need to make sure. There we go. All right. Hide that. Go that. Why don't you say hello? I've been talking.
Oh, hi. She always tells me beforehand, hey, you do the introduction, and then when it starts, she does it. And so she didn't today. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So go ahead and read our first question, Andy.
Where you place a title if a person has one. Front of the name, after the name, or somewhere else. So these are things like what? Doctor, captain,
Major,
president, major.
This would not necessarily be Mr. or Mrs.
Because those are just implied.
Yeah, señor, señora. Now, if you live in a country where that actually is important, then it would include that. But it typically isn't the assumed, I guess, gender titles. But this would also be queen, duke, queen
Lord,
consort,
lady,
lord, lady,
sir,
all of that.
If you're like a knight.
Yes.
Are there knightesses? I don't know.
Think so.
If you're from, no, there's gotta be. So if you're from the United Kingdom there, can you tell us, are there female knights? And what are they called? Because I don't think they're called sir. There's got to be female knights.
There probably isn't. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about putting a title. For me, a title should go in a title field. Now, I'm actually going to pop over to Roots Magic real quick. And although this is pretty small, what they have over here is they say given name, surname, and then they have prefix. Prefix or title goes in front of the name. And then over on the side, you can see that there's Dr. McKendry C. Smith.
Why don't you make that smaller so it's bigger here?
I don't know if that will actually work because it does the whole window.
Oh, you're doing the whole screen.
Yeah. I'm not able, when we do pre-record videos, I can zoom in really, really well. Let me see if they have them.
Dame. That's what somebody said. That makes sense because there's I can't remember her name. She was an actress. Mm-hmm. Dame, whatever. But I thought Agatha Christie was a dame also.
That could be it too. All right, here we go. So I did find the magnifier, but I can't actually move my mouse over because then it will get really crazy. But you can see that we have this little title, Dr. McKendry Smith. And over here in Roots Magic, when you're typing in the person's details, you're going to see McKendry Smith, McKendry given, surname Smith, and prefix doctor. Now, suffix is things at the end. So this would be junior, senior, third, fourth, esquire, any other those things that go at the end of someone's name, that goes in the suffix. And then the title goes in the prefix. Now, unfortunately, not all genealogy programs make it this easy. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I need to close the, there's a way to get out of it. Hold on. I got to turn this baby off.
Oh, we're right over here.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. That's not the best magnifier that we have, but that is an option there. So I'm going to get out of Roots Magic and pull this up. Okay. So in various people's family trees, baronet. Yep. That's a good one. Family trees, they have various names. So if you just look at it, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, comma, Queen Elizabeth II. It's really hard to see if this title, Queen Elizabeth II, is in what part it is in that person's name. So when you're looking at other people's tree, this is how I figured out how to see how they are adding the name to the tree. So we're going to pretend to click on Tools and save someone else's tree to our tree. And we're going to use the Add New Person feature. Now, I'm not actually going through the ad, but I'm getting you to, oh, how do these people have this in their family tree? Now, that makes it a little bit better, right? Okay. So they have everything in the first name. Now, for those of our viewers who are from any part of the UK, is this Queen Elizabeth II's real name? I thought she might actually have a surname like the Huguenots or the Plantagenets. Is that how you say that?
Yes. So, well, I'm trying to think. Windsor. They're the House of Windsor, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not from the UK. So if we're wrong here, then
just
please
help
correct
us out.
us. But the Windsor name was changed like World War II timeframe, or maybe even World War I timeframe, because their real surname is like Holstein something or other, some German province where they were all from. And mm-hmm. obviously, if you're fighting the Germans, you wouldn't want your king or queen to have a German surname. And so it got changed to Windsor, which is very English sounding. But I really don't know what name Elizabeth used mm-hmm. on her birth certificate.
Right.
I do know that if I remember correctly, she doesn't have a driver's license because driver's license, if my understanding is correct, in the UK are issued by the Queen, or the King. So there's no reason for the king or the queen to have a driver's license because they would be issuing one to themselves.
True.
So I'm wondering if they ever get pulled over for a parking ticket.
Okay, so there is someone who shared this, and you guys can also add in whether this is right or not.
There, Stacy's got it. Well, let's see here. Her last name is Windsor, so that's the family name. But she added Mountbatten to her children's names. And I'm not sure if Mountbatten was from Prince Philip. Yes, there. So,
right.
So wait a second then. So that would mean that this really, if I'm looking at this right, really this should be Elizabeth Alexandra Mary in the first and middle name. We should have Windsor in the last name. And like you said, there's no place to put the title of queen.
Right.
But yeah.
So this is a problem, right? So I'm going to show you that this problem is very inconsistent. So you have one person in their family tree, they do it this way. Another person just calls her Queen Elizabeth II of England as her last name. Now, in some, as you go further back in time, there weren't surnames. And so the location of where somebody was from is how genealogists tried to identify who people were to kind of get them separated. And so I have seen the further back in time you go when surnames disappear, particularly in English-speaking countries, even some of the European countries, that surname becomes the of Alsace-Lorraine, of Hanover, of so-and-so and so forth. And so this of England seems a little weird because she has a more proper name. I don't know how to say that, but she has her title name and then she has her behind the scenes name.
Well, and so this is one of the things that we talked about before that is also, when we're talking about titles, is confusing. So Elizabeth, I think we all understand Elizabeth is at least one of her first names, if not her first name. Queen is certainly part of the title. But this second is also part of the title.
Because it's not really a suffix.
It's not a suffix. She's not Elizabeth the Junior. You know, her mother was not Elizabeth. She is Elizabeth II because she's the second queen named Elizabeth that England has had as far, maybe.
Yes. And so the reason why we're kind of pointing this out is to show you why there are problems. And I'm going to give you the final answer of what to do here in a minute. And some of you might not like it, but I hope some of you will work with me on it. Okay, so the next one is this Henry. This is that name that I don't know how to pronounce.
Plantagenet.
Plantagenet. I don't use it enough. I don't see it enough. So I never remember how to say it. But we have the first name as Henry. And then we have the last name, Henry III, Plantagenet, King of England. Okay. So what are we seeing? In the chat, tell me what you're seeing if you're using Ancestry with regarding where do you stick the titles. We're going to give bonus points for those who pick up on what I'm trying to say. And so not only that, here is someone who doesn't have necessarily the title, like I said, in their name, but their last name is where they're from. But then they have the of over here in the first name rather than in the last name, and so on and so forth. So, all right.
So here's one other thing with Ancestry, personally, that I don't like is they have the first and the middle name in the same field.
That is correct. I don't like that either.
Because, for instance, my mom, her first name is Betty Jo. Two names, Betty Jo, but it's all part of her first name. She has no middle name. But if you just have everything all mashed together in the first and middle name thing here, and you saw Betty Jo, you might think, oh, her first name's Betty and her middle name is Jo, and so we're going to call her Betty. No one in her entire life has ever called her Betty that has had more than one interaction with her. Because Betty is not her first name. Betty Jo is her first name.
All right, so let's pop over to a different platform. This is FamilySearch. Now, if you're on WikiTree, tell me if you have something similar to what they have on Roots Magic and they're also going to have here on FamilySearch. If you use Find My Past or My Heritage or any other genealogy software program or database, tell me what options are available. So this is Marie Antoinette, and she's got the biggest dang online last name in this profile that I've ever seen.
Josephine de Habsburg, Lorraine. Queen Consort, Duchess, Archduchess. Oh, this brings up, another question. We're talking about titles, particularly royal titles. What happens when you end up having multiple royal titles?
Yes, because they could have a title in one location and another title in another location and so on and so forth.
Right. You might be king of this country, but you are also happen to be the duke or the baron of this other little state and the lord protector of this third place.
Yeah.
And so, well, okay, stop real quick. Go back to, no, just in talking. You can go to our big faces if you want.
Okay.
So if we go back.
I wanted to zoom this in a little bit just to make it new. And just so you know, this is the new FamilySearch page view, and we'll be touching on that here in a little bit. So what is your point?
If we go back to Queen Elizabeth, okay, she is Queen of England. Well, I'm not sure if her title there is Queen of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, or Queen of Great Britain. But she also is the Queen of Canada. And our Canadian viewers can correct us if I'm wrong here. So that is a separate title from being the Queen of England. And I believe she's also the Queen of Australia, which again is another separate title. And so do we put all those, or am I just crazy and Elizabeth's really not that? I'm trying to remember back when we went to Canada and went to the Ottawa, their Parliament building. Yeah. Because there was a room in there, and I think it was the House of Commons. The Queen was not allowed to go there because that was for the common, the lay people. And it was basically pretty cool because us dumb Americans were able to go someplace the Queen of England could not go.
That was kind of fun.
That was pretty cool.
That was kind of fun. And for the Canadians who know that history, that's good on you. But Queen of the Commonwealth.
Queen of the Commonwealth. Okay.
Thank you, Simon. I appreciate that. So it is fun to go to different countries and learn these different factoids, but what do we do about the titles? And a lot of people are sharing some different topics. So let me go over to FamilySearch like I was going to, show you what the options are there, and then I'm going to finally give you my answer. Okay?
All right.
So stay tuned. All right. So now we're over here on FamilySearch, and we were at Marie Antoinette. Now, if you click on this edit title page, you're going to actually see what the options are. For most, not for most, I know why this is happening. It is coming from a GEDCOM file. And remember I said Ancestry doesn't have a title field, but Roots Magic has a prefix field, and FamilySearch, wouldn't you know it, has a title field. So all of this, I'm not actually going to change it because I don't want to get yelled at by the 145 contributors, but I would actually put all of that title stuff at the beginning. Some of you had said, hey, in order of significance, there was someone.
Yeah, Empty Man said you put the comma between the titles and you put them in the order of significance.
Yeah, here it was, right here.
Is that going to cause a problem, though, if you happen to be King of England and King of France? Which one do you put before the other?
Great questions. And that's a battle for historians, I think, to solve. But for us lay people, when we're dealing with these royal titles, it would be really great on FamilySearch if we move these to the title and we take all the titles out of the suffix. Okay. Because again, if we go back to Mackenzie Smith, we can put his doctor here. And if he's a PhD, then I would put his PhD in a suffix, and depending on what he's a PhD of, is he a PhD of basket weaving? I wouldn't put a title up there, a doctor up there, because we don't want to confuse people. So I would put the PhD over here because I have an ancestor who's a PhD of physics. And so I put his PhD in the suffix rather than in the title. So what is my answer? All of this to say, let's go back and talk about some of your answers, and you're going to understand why this topic is important. Okay. So one, I always put the title in the suffix box in quotes. Okay. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. No, hide that one. In the suffix box, there seems to be a little bit of consensus on the suffix box. I don't have anything in a tree, but I think I would put it in the suffix box. Then we did that one. Put them in the description. Okay, so that takes me back to Ancestry here. They have a title field. If you watched my video about fact types, you can add titles. So let me go ahead and show you that. Okay, and I need to hide your topic. Okay, so Ancestry does have the ability to add a title. So you can go over here to add the fact, And you can scroll down to title. Whoops, that's not the right one. Sorry about that. Going too fast. Title, right here, title. And then it says date, location, and description. Now, here's one thing to consider. Sometimes, especially in some royalty, according to the historical fiction that I've read, you shouldn't get all of your knowledge from historical fiction, but some people are born with one particular title. And then when they come into their inheritance, they have a different title. So there's a date when they obtain that title. And then when they go into another title, maybe later on through conquering this, that, or the other, they may get another title. So I feel like this would be kind of nice. So let's pretend for an instance, we're just pretending. 1815, she became, oops. Oh,
before the birth date.
Oops, sorry. 1896, because this is a total fake date.
That's before the birth date still, or that's...
No.
No, it's looking for an exact date.
Is it? No, it just didn't want to refresh. Okay, so let's say she became Queen of America. Let's just pretend, because I want to show you what happens. And of course, I'm going to take this out because it's garbage. All right. So in 1896, she becomes Queen of America. If we add that to the tree, then right here, the title goes right there in the list. But let's say we didn't add a date of when that title came to be. If we take it off and we click save, then what happens, and this goes back to Debbie's comments of, oh, I'll just put it in the title. It goes all the way down to the bottom. So now she's Queen of America down at the bottom. And so many people are going to miss that title thing. So I really don't necessarily like this way of adding a title to somebody's name. But if you want to track the history of when they got that title, that'd be great. Now, one of the things I'm going to have to say is that if you happen to have a pageant queen, and you may think, oh, that's kind of silly, but bear with me. When people get certain titles, maybe their rank in the military, they go from sergeant and then the next one above sergeant, or they go from captain to admiral. Tracking that change could be helpful. And then in pageants, if you were Miss San Jacinto Teen USA 1993, I could put that date, location, and the title I had, and that would be kind of interesting. So one of my friends became Miss Universe, Chelsea Smith. So I could record, when did she become Miss Texas? When did she become Miss USA? When did she become Miss Universe? And have that in the title field, because it is a title, even though it's associated with the pageant. So that is one way to do that. But when we're actually trying to just track the names of the title, I don't think this fact field really works for Ancestry. So you've been waiting long enough. What should we be doing if we have titles for people and your platform of choice does not have a title field? Instead of making a mess of things, of putting it in the first name field or putting it in the last name field or putting in the suffix, I would actually invite you to do something completely different. I would ask you to, after this live stream is over, send to tech support or feedback to Ancestry and say, please give us a prefix / title field. Because as genealogists, we want consistency, right? Across platforms. So there's always a standard. Now, we may have to work on, like we said earlier, the most prominent comma, the next prominent comma, and the next one. Or do we just pick the ultimate one, you know, the Tsarina of Russia, and then later in your notes in the title facts, we put other titles Katharina from Russia might have had before she became the Tsarina. That's fine too. We can work out those standards. But the problem that we have in telling people what to do is there's too many things that people are doing and there isn't any consistency, and that creates a very messy family tree. And if you watch my videos about place locations, I don't like inconsistency and poor standards. And so that actually is my solution. Trying to get more platforms to look more like FamilySearch and Roots Magic, where they have a prefix or a title field. Now, tell me if you are a wiki trigger or use any of the other platforms if they have that prefix or title field. I didn't do enough research. I apologize before I got on.
Okay, so real quick to add on to this, I put up Stacy's comment here, which is interesting as far as the way that she would do it. And so she says, to use the current one, I think I would put Prince in the title, William Mountbatten Windsor in the name, and then in the suffix, put the titles like Prince of Wales and then any other ones that he has, because he probably has multiple titles, is my guess. Which I, when I was reading this, I'm like, I actually kind of like that, because it almost sounds like the old movies, not the old movies, but where you're going to the ball and you're entering the ball and they announce you.
The major domo, I believe.
Clanks
clanks
the staff and says, Prince William Mountbatten Windsor, Prince of Wales, protector of the Highlands, blah, 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 blah. And so just from a formality standpoint, that way that she has it laid out actually sounds really good, because then from your programs and your websites, if they all had those fields, when it showed who this person is, it's like this royal announcement type of thing. Mm-hmm. So Stacy, I like that idea.
And Stacy's on a roll, because she said, I think about what you said at the date of getting a title. Then it proves that the suffix field isn't born that way. They become seniors after they have a junior, or they become a junior becomes a junior at birth, but a senior doesn't become a senior at birth. They are not a senior at birth. And so I do like that. I think you've got a great valid point. I don't necessarily think we should put Chelsea Smith Miss Universe in her title, but she could, if that's what she's known by.
So when we're talking about things like senior and junior, what about for informal seniors and juniors? So in other words, you have some little small town up in New York in the 1700s where there was 2 Tom Smiths.
That's correct.
One Tom Smith was 80 years old. The other Tom Smith was 20 years old. They weren't related to each other.
That's correct.
And so in the town records, to keep old Tom Smith separate from young Tom Smith, they called him Tom Smith Sr. and Tom Smith Jr.
In that case, that's when I would take advantage of the also known as, because that's not necessarily how you don't know if around town that's how they were known. All you know is in that document, that's how they used it to keep them separate. And you don't want to put in a senior and have people think they should be looking for a junior and then not have a junior. And then people are pulling their hair out looking for this lost junior that never really existed. So that's when I would take that name and put it as an also known as, and have that there. And then you can explain why it's not really their name. It was a name on documents only.
So Ascertain pointed out that when we were showing the ancestry, the social security number was displayed. This person's deceased.
Yes.
So that social security number is available for everybody to see.
Yes. And if you want to go research my ancestor, that my relative, that'd be great. So yes, I specifically chose deceased persons because I don't want to reveal anything about the living, but good call. I appreciate that. All right. And then thank you for letting us know that WikiTree has a prefix / title field. Good job on WikiTree. So we've got 2 websites, one genealogy software program. I'm not sure about Legacy and Family Tree Maker and all the rest, but it would be really great if in the next year we can motivate these platforms to add that title and prefix so we don't have these arguments anymore. So that is my call to action to everybody who's watching here. If you're using Ancestry, if you're using Family Tree Maker, if you're using any website that doesn't have a title or prefix, go send them a polite request for that added, because it really isn't that complicated in programming. I made databases before. It's inserting a little column and making it show up. It really isn't that much of a deal. And then we won't ever have to talk about where do you put it in there, because it is 2022. The fact that this isn't consistent really is problematic in my eyes. But that is your call to action. We usually have about 1,000 or more people watch our live shows. So go take action. That's the answer to that question. All right. I do want to pull in this research question that Dorianne had. Okay. So it said, my relative on Ancestry has family going back to American Revolution. What is the best place to start confirming these connections? All right. So with all genealogy research questions, you always start from known to unknown, from proven to unproven. So I want you to make sure that you have a well-documented line from yourself to this potential American ruler patriot. The reason being is in my family line, I was told I had a patriot ancestor, and it turned out they were a United Empire loyalist that left what became the United States of America, went up to Ontario because they didn't want to fight. They got land, so on and so forth. And thus begins the comforts of Ontario, Canada.
They were patriots of the wrong country.
They were patriots for a different country, right?
Actually, they were patriots for the original country.
They were loyalists, right? They were loyalists. So that keeps it simple. But had I gone in and looked for American Revolution proving records for John Comfort that went to Ontario, I would be barking up the wrong tree. Now, John, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but he had some of his family members that stayed in the United States, and they are American Revolution ancestors. They're patriots. He was a loyalist, right? You know, just using the American definitions. If you're from the UK, you have different definitions, but or labels. But I would find that brother and the other siblings, and that would be great. And wondering, where's my John? Well, John went elsewhere. So the very first thing you do to try to prove or disprove is make sure that you know everybody from you to that potential person is resolved. So then after that, my number one go-to thing is to see if somebody has already done the research and had it approved that from the Daughters of the American Revolution. So there is a database, there's the DAR database. And if you go to their research in their genealogy section, you will see that you can type in a patriot name. You're going to see details about that. And if they have been submitted and approved, you will see their documentation. Now, there is some debate. Some of the older applications have actually proven to be false. And there are often, if I remember correctly, some lines that says disputed, refuted, or whatever like that. But I would go there to see if the research has already been done, because why do duplicate research? Instead, I would go see what somebody has already done and then go work on validating. Did the records that they say are they actually accurate, or did somebody make a tangent? That's the second step of peer reviewing that I try to tell people to do frequently. And then after that, then I would go to the FamilySearch wiki page, look up for American Revolution research strategies, and it's going to tell you everything that you could possibly want to know and more things that I won't even think of. But that's always my first three steps. One, go from known to unknown, proven to unproven, then look to see if somebody has already done the research that you can just spend your time validating. And then 3, go find the research methodology that's available in FamilySearch Wiki. There's also a thing called the Family History Guide, and they also have some great blogs, videos, and other stuff about different methodology if you've looked at that before. So that's what I would tell you to do. If anybody else has other suggestions, drop those into the comments for them. I'm seeing one, veteran pension filings. Yes, exactly. And I didn't want to start naming records because invariably somebody gets mad that I don't talk about their favorite record collection. There's bounty warrants. There's lots of other ones. So that's why I always direct people to one that has pretty much the whole list of things to look at. All right.
Real quick here. Sure. Just along that same line. So Matt Potter, I'm guessing Matt is from England because he says to us in England, they would have been traders, unlike those nice Canadians. And obviously, you know, whenever you're looking at this, you have to look at it. Okay, what perspective are you looking from?
That is correct.
So, for instance, if we're looking for a American Revolution patriot, then we want to be looking for those records of the Americans. On the other hand, if we're looking for an American Revolution traitor, Well, there might be some records. I'm not sure as far as things like, prisoners of war and other things like that,
Yes.
that England might have.
Yes.
That they're not going to call these people patriots,
No.
obviously. We captured 5 patriots.
No.
No, they've captured 5 traitors is
Or
what they
rebels.
captured. Or rebels or something
Yes.
like that. And same thing with the American Revolution or any kind of
Mhm.
civil war with this is, depending on which side you're on, will depend on whether you're calling these people patriots or traitors
Mhm.
or loyalists. And here usually with the American Revolution, we talk about the loyalists were those that went to Canada that were loyal to the crown,
right?
Whereas the patriots were those who wanted freedom from the crown. But they were both traitors to the other people.
And then you got to be careful because Gibble points out the Canadians were French and England.
That's right. No, this is actually interesting. So, speaking of French in Canada and that, this past week I was in Pittsburgh and I went to the museum there for Fort Pitt, and Fort Pitt was right on the corner of where the Monongahela and the Allegheny and the Ohio rivers all joined together, and it was an important fort for the French when they owned it all, and then later after the French and Indian War for the English. But and this is what's interesting about history is, there was lots of things there about the French and Indian War that I knew about, but the thing that was actually most fascinating to me was the what we call the French and Indian War here in the United States basically was overlapping the 7 Years' War in Europe, which you probably could call the First World War between England and France and all of their colonies across. And so it spanned places like India and Africa and Australia and the United States, and I think even South America. Wherever England and France had colonies, they were people fighting each other all this time. And so, when she said that the Canadians were French, they've been fighting them for the 1400s. England and France had been fighting for a long time, with some nice breaks in between whenever there was the plague or something like that decimated the forces.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at least they're good terms now.
Yeah.
And they have been for, 100 years or so.
For sure. Can you address any other comments or the records that people have suggested? I'm trying to pull something up first before we get started.
All right. So Will Johnson, he says, I've seen the prisoner of war records for the War of 1812. Another one where you would have, obviously, the Patriots against the, I'm not going to say traitors because the English weren't traitors at that point. And the Americans really weren't traitors at that point because they were their own country and they'd actually been recognized by the British for several years up to that point. But you have two sides that, prisoner of war is not going to necessarily be called in the same way that you're going to call what you call your own people, I guess.
Okay. So I'm ready to tackle the next one.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Chris says dolphins. I'm not even sure what that's in relation to. Oh, I see.
Okay.
You did say Patriots, the Dolphins and the Patriots in football.
Off topic, Chris. Off topic. All right. Okay. So here's the next question. I find this is a good question. How do you handle adoption within the family tree? Grandfather's son was adopted by grandfather's sister. Okay. So let's go ahead and show you where you can do this. I need to pull up this tree real quick and I'll be all ready. Okay. And I'm working with all deceased people just because I like to work with deceased people. All right. So in genealogy research, genealogy is about records of relationships. So you can have a biological family, you can have adopted, guardian, foster, step, so on and so forth. So here we have Geraldine, and we're going to just pretend the question said, my grandfather's, what did it say? Grandfather's son. I'm just going to say grandfather's daughter just to make this easy because it really doesn't matter that part. So let's pretend that Geraldine's grandfather's sister adopted her. Okay. And I got to get my notes because I prepared this ahead of time so I wouldn't get lost. All right. So let's pretend her grandfather, William Lester Long, grandfather's sister. So her grandfather, sister. So we need to actually go up to William Long. Now you cannot.
You mean John Long or William?
John Long? You're right. I'm sorry. There, you can't do this from the child's page. You can't add extra parents from the child's page. You have to go to the parents page and then add the child.
In Ancestry.
In Ancestry. Yes, that is correct. I tried to do it earlier today. So unless it changed within the last hour of me making this video, you can't add extra parents from the child's play easily. Let's say easily, because I couldn't find it easily. So I'm going to go to William John W. Long, William's daddy-o, okay? And we're going to go to his sister, Claire, because here's William Lester.
That's the grandfather.
That's the grandfather, and this is the grandfather's sister. So if I click on the sister and I go to add daughter, I can select Geraldine from the FamilySearch ancestry tree. Okay, so she's Geraldine Gertrude Ring. I'm going to attach her to the couple, not the unknown father, the couple, and click save. Now, we do have this Gertrude, and it looks like, wow, they must be really old having that child, right? Because 1854, 1853. 40. That's gonna flag a red flag. So what are we going to do now? Next, we're going to go click on Gertrude. And we're going to come to this quick edit tool up at the top. And we're going to edit relationships. And here we switch the biological to adopted. And depending on who you really want to have show up on your family tree, you can make this preferred, whichever way you want to go. Fair enough? So you should add adopted to your family tree. Now the question becomes, what if he's really just a stepfather? Should you go through and add a child to a stepfather? And I have this rule of thumb. If the stepfather is very active in someone's life, then you can, if you wish, add the child and mark him as a step. Otherwise, it's just assumed that additional spouse becomes a stepfather without creating the links into the family tree. Does that make sense?
That makes
or
sense.
How else would you clarify that?
No, that's good.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go back in later and clean her up. But that's how you do the adopted there. Now on FamilySearch, I'm in the FamilySearch beta. This isn't going to be live because I don't want to mess up the family tree. And I think I didn't show you what I was talking about a minute ago. I tend to do that. All right. All right. Oopsie. So we're going to pretend that Robert Paul Geisler Sr., he is the grandson of Henry Joseph Geisler. Now, I have no idea why the maiden name is, or the female, the maternal, is that the right word? The maternal flips up here where everybody else has the paternals on top. I haven't figured out why that is. It seems right now the only one I found is her that flips. So if anybody has a solution, that'd be great. Maybe it's just a wonky thing going on in beta. But we're going to go to his father's sister, right? No. Robert Paul Sr., Henry Joseph. Yes, we need to go to his. Okay, in beta, I can't expand it for whatever dumb reason. So I'm going to go to his profile. Not everything works in beta as smoothly as it does in live, so that's why you have some problems. All right, if I go to Mary Elizabeth Geisler, go down to her, and I can add a child right here in this couple. So I'm going to add a child, and I happen to know Robert's, no, I don't. I don't have his link. All right, so I'm going to try to put in his ID number. Hold on a second. All right, talk and answer questions while I go back and find.
You always make me do this. Talk and answer questions.
I do.
I don't know what to talk and answer questions.
Well, look at the comments.
There's no questions.
There's no questions yet. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
They're talking about the prisoner of war records for 1812 that
perfect.
are in England.
Okay, so I went back to the tree and I clicked on his PID and it says click. And oh, look at that right now for some reason. Now what I wanted earlier is showing up. Who knows why that is? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the children, Mary Elizabeth Geisler. Go back to her profile page. Come down. Add a child. And I'm going to add an ID number. Okay, and click next. And it says, do you want this one? Yes, I do. Go ahead and add a match. And now Robert's there. But notice she stopped having kids in 1898. Zoom that in a little bit more. So 1926, you got some explaining to do. So that's when we're going to click on the little pencil icon.
Science.
And click add type and then switch it to adopted. But notice I could do foster, guardianship, and step as well here. And then I need to say the adopted date or around the time that it got adopted and drop in the reason statement right there. And if I click save, then notice now it says adopted. And if you see his person in the tree, you're going to see adopted. And that's going to really stand out that Robert is not a biological, that's an adopted kid. And so that's how you can track your adoptions in your family tree. And it doesn't really matter, whose relationship, what people within the family is adopting. And then there's this new thing that FamilySearch did release. It said add other relationship. And I wanted to point that out as a bonus, Jonas, little feature here. If we click on add relationship, you can select a person, any person in the family tree, and then you can do apprenticeship, employment, enslavement, godparent, household, neighbor, or relative. So now you can start doing fan club research on FamilySearch, and that's live right now. I don't think, be careful that you don't go too carried away with that.
How does that, real quick, how does that show up then in their profile? It shows up under this other relationship?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm going to go pull up somebody that I know is a godfather, godchild relationship. I need to put in those codes real quick. So we have 9HH1WDV.
I hadn't seen this on FamilySearch before, so.
I found it today. Oh, go figure. Okay. I'm going to go. Let me turn this off for a second. Okay. I'm going to go to my tree. And I might have to log out of beta because sometimes beta starts crashing and I don't like that. But I'm going to go ahead and get live. If you have other questions, make sure you add your questions now while I'm pulling something up. It's going to take me just a minute or two.
So Ascertain says they should add witness, unknown cousin. I was just thinking indenture, because indentured servants were different from enslaved people. But they did have the apprentice on there. No, that's actually really good because if you...
Or fiancés. Because my grandmother had a fiance, or my great grandmother had a fiance, died before they got married. But sometimes people leave you at the altar, that kind of thing. That would be kind of helpful.
Did they have friend on there?
They had neighbor.
What about business partner or something?
They had employment or employer. They didn't have business partner.
So it sounds like, okay, that's a good start. But even just with some of the things that people are saying here, it sounds like there's some extra that you need to do there. Now, Ascertain mentioned unknown cousin. That's would actually be very useful as you're trying to get your tree together of, hey, I need to get these people linked. I don't know how they're linked. So pop them in there as an unknown cousin. And then once you have it, then.
Yep. Okay. I think I'm ready now. All right. I got the right guy.
Okay.
Okay, so this is George Barton Geisler, and his godfather was another guy who worked at the railroad station with George Joseph Geisler. His name is listed in our family Bible. I had no idea who the freak this guy was until I talked to my relatives. They're like, oh, that's George's godfather. Now, George's godfather had no children, so this is going to be fun. All right. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do add relationship, and I'm going to add the person, and I'm going to do his ID just because it's easier to find him by the ID. Now this is live, so we shouldn't have any goofy things happen. So I'm going to click next. And this is Samuel Bailey Barton, and those are his wives. So I know that this is the godfather. I'm going to add a match, and then I can come up here and do godparents. So no, there's no friend. So there's no associate, there's no business partner or something. But again, if you like something,
there's relative.
There is a relative. So that's that unknown
cousin. Yeah, that would be your unknown cousin type of thing.
And then in a moment here, I think you could explain it all away. But anyway, I'm going to click godparent. So we have switch. There we go. That makes more sense. You got to be careful with that. I didn't see that earlier. Okay. So we've got it. Godfather is Samuel Bailey. Godchild is George Barton. And then I can click save.
Oh, which his last name is Barton, which happens to be his godfather's last name.
His middle name.
Middle name.
Yep. So now forever, well, so as long as nobody changes this on me, we have him connected. So let's go over here to Samuel Bailey Barton and see what shows up. I think at the bottom, you're going to see
under other relationships.
Other relationship. There's the godparent.
No, that's really
this
handy.
Is exciting
because that allows you to connect people that aren't with a direct familial relationship.
Yep.
But are important, particularly in your research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how many of you are like, oh my gosh, I just learned something new? Learn something new in the comments right now, because I'm going to make a video about what I think about the new design of the profile page. But this right here, this ability to do fan club research is great. Start using it. If you want FamilySearch to keep something, you have to start using it. If you don't use it, then it tends to disappear and go the way of the dinosaurs. So start using it. And then if you do have problems like, oh, that didn't work, or I need another relationship, I need something else here that isn't this biological family, father, mother, child, spouse, child, whatever. I need another type of relationship. Then you can do feedback, because over here on this side is a little feedback button. So if you like something, send some feedback. Thank you so much for this new feature. Really love it. Keep it up, so on and so forth. If you love it, but you need an addition, go ahead and click feedback, and then it'll pop up this little feedback thing. Gives you this, and then it takes you through the whole process to give them the proper feedback. This is something I don't like. This is something I do like, so on and so forth. So
real quick here, Stacy mentioned something. I know that they will never add minister or lawyer because it would really screw up the minister or lawyer's page.
Yes.
But sometimes it would be really nice on the family's end. And actually, yeah, that would. Now, I don't necessarily think it would screw it up. It might need to. Well, no, because think about it this way. Right now, you have the ability to add lots of different things. Godparents, you're probably only going to have 2, maybe 4 of them. There's not that many. But employment, you might have several that are attached to that. Relative, you could have several that are attached to that. What are some of the others that you had? Apprentice, there's probably only going to be 1 or 2. Enslavement might be several, depending on whether or not that slave was sold several times. So it's set up that you could have multiples. Now, how it's displayed might be a problem, like Stacy mentions, because obviously a minister is going to have 150 parishioners or 2,000 parishioners or something.
Well, and then you're going to have them showing up on lots of different records, because sometimes people get married in their parish and it isn't their minister, or the clerk. I would really hate to have the clerk.
No, you wouldn't want. You don't want to just have. I would even say associates. The grocery store clerk, the bank teller. No, you don't need that. Even if you have this relationship with your bank teller of 30 years. But on the other hand, employment records, these religious records, like with the minister or the rabbi or whoever, that actually would be useful, I think, because the idea is you're finding records with these 2 names connected. And maybe it doesn't tell you what the relationship is, but if you found that from something else, and you later on, somebody else is looking and they find these two names and they go look at them on FamilySearch and say, oh, that was his rabbi. That's why they're connected in this other record over here.
Right. Yeah. That could definitely be something to take a peek at. Okay. Where else do we want to go? Okay. So this question.
We've got about 5 minutes.
Right. So I'm going to hold off on the other prepared question I have and then just take the 2 questions that came in. All right. In location fields and programs, is it okay to put in a township or unincorporated place prior to the county if it does not pop on a location suggestion? If you know what a place is, then absolutely. Be sure to check the videos on...
that was what, 2 weeks ago that we talked about place names? Or was that...
We talked about the unsolvable problem of place names, and there's an entire playlist. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Location. Yep. There's an entire playlist, my dear, or my darling, my whoever. There's this playlist right here that talks about locations and what to do with them. But yes, put in unincorporated names, because I talked about how I lived in the unincorporated part of Houston that was located in Fort Bend County, Texas. And so it really did impact where I went to school. It impacted where I voted. It impacted where my parents paid taxes, all these genealogically significant documents. And so you had to put it in that I lived in Houston, Fort Bend County, Texas, even though on a map and even prompts, they don't really recognize it because it's this little thing. Now, when we lived in Jonesville, that little hamlet in New York, I don't necessarily put that on the location field. We just say Clifton Park, Saratoga County? I don't know what the county
we were in
was.
Saratoga
County, New York. And then within a description field, a place description, then I'll go say, we're in the hamlet of Jonesville, 2 doors down from the fire station, right? Because then you can go, oh, there's little Jonesville hamlet on the map, and here's the fire station. Boom, we just found the house. But I wouldn't necessarily put it there. It just kind of all depends on where your location is and whether that township's going to help you identify it. But with regard to the unincorporated, definitely put it. If that place is where you were, then that's the place you should put.
You know what was really cool about that Jonesville home? They were building a cell tower at the fire station, which was 2 doors down from us. So we would have had the best cell reception you could ever have because it was right there.
For sure. Okay. I don't know.
Okay, so this one, I was reading this question here.
Okay, so you know this one?
So I might have to reword this question, but what if you can't identify who the biological parent among a family of brothers is? So you have 4 brothers, and from DNA, you've identified that one of those 4 brothers has to be the parent, but you just don't know which of those 4 brothers. How would you identify that in like FamilySearch or Ancestry? How would you create that link? And I'm trying to think here.
You know what I would do temporarily, because it's not solved? As soon as you put in a relationship people are going to think it's gospel. Okay. And that is going to be propagated like wildfire.
So here's a couple things that I did. So first off, seeing that other relationship,
You cut me off.
Yes, I did, because you cut me off sometimes too.
Okay.
So seeing that other relationship, one of them is relative. So you could link this person as a relative to each of those 4 brothers.
In that FamilySearch down at the bottom.
FamilySearch down at the bottom.
That's
now,
what I was going to say.
If you figure out which of those brothers is the biological father, then you could put them. Now, this is where it gets sort of tricky because, again, people do weird things sometimes. But what I do is I have the couple, so the mom, biological dad, linked together with this child as a child of both of them. In the married date field, I put in big capital letters, never married.
Yes, because we don't have that option in FamilySearch.
Because there's not an option to say, no, these people were never married. But that at least hopefully triggers people to say, oh, these people weren't married. I shouldn't necessarily be looking for other kids for that. And then in the explanation field, I put whatever explanation I know. That may be a lot, that may be a little. So for instance, let's say that you had a couple that maybe they were common law married, or maybe there's not common law marriage where you live. And so they were just living together, and they might have had 2 or 3 kids. Well, they're not going to have a marriage date. And so you might put never married there. But in the explanation, you can say this couple lived together for, 30 years, whatever, and had their children and raised their family that way.
However, look to see if the platform does have the common law option.
If common law was allowed. Common law marriage is not allowed everywhere.
True.
And so that's why I say it's like, if it wasn't allowed, but people were living as if they were married anyway,
sure,
you want to link them together. You want to link their family all together with them. But then this also makes an explanation so that people aren't throwing in a marriage date. Because one of the common things, as far as starting out is, hey, once you find a child, an assumption you make in order to start looking for a marriage record of that couple is a marriage date approximately 1 year before or older. So if you find this child that was born in 1850, then you might be looking for marriage records in 1849 and earlier. Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, there would be no marriage record. And if you know that, you want to put that there so people don't go off on a wild goose chase looking for something that doesn't exist.
Right. Yep. Yeah, because it could also be, there's a number of reasons why that couple created a child. We never want to assume it's rape. There is a very persistent belief in genealogy circles that some things are always rape no matter what. And I don't stand by that. But there is infidelity. There's lots of things that happen. And so if they were never married, then you want to mark never married until these platforms, again, give them feedback. Tell them we need a never married option so we can put these oopsies that we're finding more and more and more with DNA. They weren't married, but they created a child. And we need to be able to mark it as never married, because what happens, like the more we live in a modern age, there's sperm and egg donors. You don't want to put sperm and egg donors together or surrogate mothers together and that forth when they weren't married. So we do need that type of thing. So, but going back to the brothers, I do like the idea of putting it as a relative until then you can bump it into the family tree structures. Many people have said there in the chat that, yeah, once you start putting people together as a couple having offspring, it just gets shared everywhere and it's really hard to get it corrected. That's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of WikiTree and FamilySearch working collaboratively. They're not perfect, but they do strive to eliminate the propagation of inaccurate information by people joining together and working on one profile for every person who lived on the earth. So shout out to those two platforms. With that, I think
we're done for today.
We are done for the day. In 2 weeks, I think it's Thanksgiving. I think it's Black Friday. Yeah, the 25th. Is that Black Friday?
That's Black Friday.
Okay, so in America, that would be the day after Thanksgiving. I know Canadians have a different Thanksgiving. I think it's in October. I usually have pie to celebrate my Canadian heritage. Anyway, so we won't be here on our regularly scheduled time frame, but we'll be back in December with lots of questions. If your question wasn't answered for genealogy research or DNA, put them in the main comment section of this video and we will get back to them and maybe put them into another standalone video or a live stream in the future. Thank you so much. That's a wrap.
All right, we'll see y'all later.
Bye.